kind-hearted gal. Everyone loved her. She'd have been so proud of you. She stood there with her hand on Carolanne's cheek for an awkwardly long moment. Carolanne glanced over at Jill, but she was no help. Carolanne glared at her. Once they started laughing, they'd never stop. It had always been that way. Then, like someone had squirted her with a dose of WD-40, Millie sprang into action, rustling through her flowered sewing box, whipping out old-fashioned hem clips and her pincushion, an old, chubby, tomato-shaped one. She shuffled over to the desk, grabbed the footstool, and dragged it to the center of the floor. "Can you step up on this in those shoes without breaking your neck?" Carolanne lifted the dress as she walked toward Millie and stepped up onto the stool. "I can." "The dress, the color, it's all perfect," Jill said, clapping her hands. Carolanne smoothed the skirt and spun, letting the fine layers of fabric swirl around her legs. "I love it." Jill held her hands to her heart. "I couldn't have dreamed it more perfect." Carolanne gave Jill a look. "You've had that giant binder of pictures and lists for your wedding since we were in junior high. Since before you had a groom. This perfection is exactly what you dreamed of." Jill shrugged. Okay, so it's just as I planned, but it's even better in real life." Millie tucked pins between her lips and tugged on the dress. "Are you standing straight?" "Yes, ma'am," Carolanne said. "Hold still." Millie lifted the hem of the dress, letting it fall naturally. "I feel 17 again." "Your prom dress wasn't nearly as lovely as this one, but I'll never forget how excited you were about going to that dance. You were so darn wiggly I'd like to never have gotten that dress hemmed." "Too bad I didn't get to go to the dance. All that time you spent on that dress, for nothing." "It wasn't for nothing. I loved every minute of sewing that dress for you." Even after all these years, Carolanne remembered every little detail of that night and how her father had ruined it for her by pulling one of his drunken stunts. Why is it so easy to remember the bad things? "That was a long time ago. The future is much brighter. For you, your dad, all of us," Millie said through the tight-lipped hold she had on the pins in her mouth. Jill pretended to whisper to Carolanne, "Be glad she doesn't have to mark any more than your hem. I swear my heart couldn't take another hour of her nearly stabbing me or worrying about her swallowing those pins." "My hearing ain't gone yet." Millie's voice raised a notch in a slight tone of defiance. "Jill fussed the whole time I marked her dress, and I might remind you, Missy, that it wouldn't have taken so long if you hadn't lost that weight. Caused me to have to take in the gown a whole size. Not an easy task with all that beading, either." She looked like a catfish with all those pins hanging out of her mouth. Millie raised a brow and aimed her question at Jill. "Have you ever heard of anyone swallowing pins?" Jill set her chin in a stubborn line. "Well, no, but it could happen. Tell her, Carolanne, it could happen." "Oh, no," said Carolanne. "I'm not getting in the middle of this." "I swear you are just like Pearl," Millie said to Jill. Carolanne stifled a laugh. "And I love you in spite of that," Millie said. "You're just like your grandmother when it comes to bossing folks around and controlling every little detail, but I guess someone's got to do it." "Speaking of details," Carolanne asked Jill, "are there any other maid of honor tasks I need to take care of for you before this weekend?" Jill shook her head. "No, we're actually ahead of schedule. My 4-H girls volunteered to work on the tulle bags of lavender after the meeting, so you're off the hook for that." "I like that." Carolanne made a quarter turn and a mental note that she should get involved with some of the groups in town like Jill had. It was something she'd meant to do, but here it was a year later and she'd yet to do it. "I like it even more that I didn't have to tie all those ribbons." "See, if I weren't so good at organizing tasks, we'd be up to our armpits in last-minute to-dos," Jill pointed to Carolanne. "You'll be thanking me when I'm helping you plan your wedding." The thought of a wedding of her own sent a pulse spinning like an ice skater, and not in a good way. She'd never let her happiness revolve around someone else. Seeing the crushing blow disable her dad when Mom died.